It's 27 degrees here in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Maupe Ogun-Yusuf.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Good morning and welcome. Today is February 12. That's just February 12. It's the 12th day in the month of February 2025. And thank God it's Wednesday. What's funny?
Are you done? Emphasizing that today is the 12th.
Yes, just saying.
Oh, well.
And you know, there are some people
Today
who are going to... Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, just saying, you know, sometimes when people just want to go out on weekends, you know, they have all kinds of places they want to go to and things they want to do together. So let's take you to one of those places you might want to go on Friday. This Friday in particular. And it's right here in Lagos. The Lekki Conservation Center is where we're taking you this morning. And you can be sure that beside the fact that, let me just look at the lush green. On the left and on the right, of course, you can see that it's all built up. But the Lekki Conservation Center has been preserved over the years. And it's just lush green. So if you're thinking that Lagos is all brown and built up and concrete jungle, well, we have a place that we have conserved just for a time when you might want to go somewhere. Of course, we're giving you a panoramic view of the surroundings, and that horizon you are seeing right there around the city of Lagos. But right now we are segueing into, yes, the Lekki Conservation Center itself and its lush green and everything. Of course, that bird is wondering what's going on. And this place is where you are likely to be welcomed at Lekki Conservation Center whenever you want to just take a breather from the hustle and bustle of city life from any part of Nigeria. And if you've never been to Lagos, yes, it's possible that some people have never been to Lagos and you're wondering where's a cool place you can go to just to be by yourself and be by nature. This is where you can go to. I'm sure you have some memories of here, Amah.
Oh, yes, indeed, Ayo. And I can tell you they are very happy memories. You know, some of the best photos we took of my mother before she passed were taken in this place. So, yes, I think it is a place that people can make memories and, you know, they will always be with you. We have to thank those who had the foresight to ensure that such a place was conserved and preserved. Those who have taken the pains to make sure that it continues to be in this pristine form. You know, it reminds us, those who have been to New York City, they'll tell you about Central Park in New York, that amidst the concrete jungle, you know, some people had the bright idea, the vision to say, you know what, let us leave a portion as it is and see how it is that, you know, we can continue to breathe in clean air, something that purifies the environment, something that keeps the animals in there, because it will shock you that a number of the animals that are there were originally native to that particular place and they continue to be there. So, I mean, beautiful visual that we're seeing. I'm hoping that even here in Abuja, as it continues to develop and many other cities, as they start to think about them, that they will also think about conservation efforts, and they will think about the environment. For those who are building estates, I mean, real estate is the next best thing now, you know, they will have the good memory to say, you know what can we do to also ensure that we think about nature, we conserve nature, we make sure that, because it has to be an integral part of our lives, that way we are preserved when nature is preserved. If we're not preserved, I tell you, Ayo, you know, we are only courting trouble. But this is what we're saying this morning, and I can say that it is a sight to behold. Now, while you keep pressing my neck and reminding me that today is the 12th. I mean, as if it's not bad enough that Instagram presses my neck. You open your phone and you're reminded, oh, it's just 2 days to Valentine's. I have to come on set. And Ayo keeps emphasizing, it's the 12th, it's the 12th. I know, Ayo. I'm sure a lot of people know as well.
I'm just saying, okay. You know, I'm just saying. I always give the dates, don't I? I'm just saying, you know.
I know. You must keep giving the dates in the manner in which you've been giving them this last few days. Oh, well, I think that, you know, the point is made. It's a cool, wonderful place to make memories. And if you do have the time this weekend, it certainly will be a lovely place to go to. So thank you for bringing that up, Ayo. We'll take a break at this point and we're back to look at some pretty serious matters when we return. Please stay with us.
In line with the provisions of the PDP Constitution 2017 as amended, and after careful deliberations, the State Working Committee, SWC, and the State Executive Committee, SEC, have unanimously resolved to suspend Senator Adolphus Nwabara from the party. Reasons for the suspension. 1. Breach of party loyalty. In October 2023, Senator Adolphus Nwabara publicly endorsed the governor of Abia State, Dr. Alex Chioma Oti of the Labour Party, for a second term in office, barely 5 months after his inauguration. These endorsements, widely circulated in national dailies and on social media, constitutes a flagrant act of sabotage against the People's Democratic Party.
Well, that statement was read by the chairman of the PDP in Abia State. His name is Elder Abraham Amah. You just heard him there reading a letter purportedly suspending the chairman of the BOT of the party, Senator Adolphus Nwabara, from the People's Democratic Party owing to anti-party conduct. That's what they said from the State Working Committee. However, the national body of the PDP has also released a statement countering that. They titled it PDP NWC dismisses purported suspension of party BOT chairman, Senator Nwabara. So that is also there as well. But to take a look at this particular issue and find out what precisely is going on, what exactly is this all about, we have with us, joining us via Zoom this morning, Mr. Emeka Ikpegbu, who is a former commissioner of the Abia State Oil Producing Area Development and also the National Coordinator of PDP Frontiers for Change and Progress. Mr. Ikpegbu, good morning and thank you so much for joining us this morning. What is this suspension about?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. The thing is, there's nothing like suspension. Amah Abraham decided yesterday to disrupt the polity. First of all, you don't do what you don't have. Which power does he have to suspend the chairman of PDP? Secondly, he doesn't have that legitimacy. He's one Amah Abraham. He's not the PDP chairman in Abia State. There is a court order that stopped that Congress. He elected himself with his goons. So, and why most people, you go and look at the video where he was elected, people did not participate simply because they know who is Amah Abraham. If he doesn't do this, he's doing that, he won't be Amah Abraham. We know him in Abia State. This thing started since 1998. So he's known for killing. He's known for disrupting public peace. He's known for causing confusion. Look at now. Last 2 months thereabout, he came up with shadow government. And today he's coming up with suspension of BOT chairman, which means there's an agenda. And he belongs to those who do not want the party to grow. So what I'm telling you, in Abia State, where I'm talking to you, I'm calling from, this suspension does not hold. We don't even know. It's in the social media that we read it. But if you go to a, let's even assume that Amah has that. Let's even assume that he's even the chairman, which he's not. You don't suspend from top. You suspend from down. Also, this is the BOT chairman, a member of NEC. It's only the National Executive Committee of the party can even ratify when there is a disciplinary committee at the level of the ward who will now recommend the suspension. Having listened to him, having seen a petition from members that is involved in anti-party activity, such things did not rise. The party, in her wisdom, made procedures in disciplining a member, and let alone the BOT. My sister, Nigerians should understand that there is a grand plan to destroy this party. And when you take away the shepherd, naturally the sheep, the flock will scatter. There is an onslaught on the National Working Committee that have been able to contain it. There was onslaught on Governors Forum, they have been able to contain. Now they are looking at the BOT. And Amah Abraham has elected himself to be used. So there's nothing happening. Pure PDP members, faithful party people are going about their normal activities. They don't believe in him. He has no legitimacy, has no credibility, doesn't have integrity to lead the PDP in Abia State. So it's the figure of imagination. So Nigerians should not even take.
I'm going to ask you two quick questions. First, who is the chairman of the party in Abia State?
That's what I'm saying. As of today, the former chairman is Asiforo. They set up a caretaker, which the others stopped. So the party is yet to elect a chairman. I'm telling you this.
Okay. And in other words, you also made clear that no due processes were followed.
No due processes. No single due processes. Even as I'm talking to you now, in the word of the BOT chairman, the people, everybody in that ward that wanted to join Amah in his travel, when he wanted to be chairman, they are all in APC now, as I'm talking to.
So this statement, which he read yesterday, is of no effect as far as you are aware. It does appear that we've lost Mr. Ikpegbu there, but the point that he has made so far is that Mr. Amah, beg your pardon, now quickly trying to confirm his name. Yeah, Mr. Abraham Amah is not the legitimate chairman of the PDP in Abia State, and has also made the case that no due processes were followed. I was just saying to you that what you're saying is that this statement which he read yesterday was of no effect. In other words, the public should ignore it?
It has already ignored it. Look at what the National Working Committee said. The party has ignored it. No single signature of every so-called state executive, no single signature of anybody. No single signature. Which means tomorrow, a party chairman can rise and begin to suspend people. He doesn't have that powers. That's what I want to say. No single signature that signed that document.
But who were those? Just to clarify, did you see, I don't know if you saw him reading out the press statement. There were a number of people around him there while he was reading that statement. Did you recognize any of them as members of your party or members of the state executive?
Sister, one, PDP is a big umbrella. So journalists are there, his friends are equally there. And when you want to do this type of hatchet job, it's a hailing job. You bring people around. Come, I want to do something, come and join me. So you can always bring people. You can see the level of unemployment. You can see the level of hunger. And now since he's doing a hatchet job, a hailing job, which everybody knows that is what he's known for. Since 1998, Abraham Amah is known for doing hailing job, hatchet job. He parades him, can do any dirty job. So what is known for is always recruit people to come and join him.
Well, we have to thank you for your perspective and for sharing that with us this morning. We'll wait and see if we can get Mr. Abraham Amah to, also give his own side of the story as to what precisely has brought this up. But thank you so much for joining us this morning, Mr. Emeka Ikpegbu, who is a former commissioner, Abia State Oil Producing Area Development, and also the national coordinator of the PDP Frontiers for Change and Progress. Well, we'll take a break at this point and we'll be back shortly to discuss another matter. Nigeria gained a point on Transparency International's ranking. Is that good? Is that something that we should celebrate? Or are we truly making progress in the fight against corruption? These are questions we'll be asking when we return from this break. Please stay with us.
The President of the Senate leads other senators for the first plenary of the week. During the session, the Senate President took note of the unusually light agenda in his remarks.
Let me plead with our colleagues so that we cut it short, and then we still have ongoing budget defense, and that's why some of the senators are not here. Senator Suko and a lot of them are there now. So we may need to finish quickly to go and brush up the budget for possible presentation tomorrow and next.
Elsewhere, the lawmakers continued major conversations at the committee level following a recent threat to issue a warrant of arrest to the Inspector General of Police. He appears before the Senate Committee on Public Accounts.
It was not deliberate. The truth is that all the dates that you have given to me to appear had clashed with other important security engagements in the Office of the Inspector General of Police.
He asked to be excused while the Assistant Inspector General of Police takes over. The committee had 8 audit queries against the police, including a case of 1.1 billion naira contract splitting.
3,907 assorted rifles and pistols across different police formations that could not be accounted for as at January 2020.
Before his response, some senators began to advocate for a closed-door session, but that request was shut down.
The issue of firepower of any organization is secret and holds separately to our chest.
Nothing should be treated secretly under my watch. Please, AIG, tell us what happened to these firearms. 3,907 firearms, mainly AK-47.
What is worrisome is that this money used to procure arms for the purpose of protecting Nigerians by trained Nigeria police force is now lost. You have an obligation not only to disclose but to apprehend, parade, and name such persons. This country must operate under the same level of rule of law.
Having met resistance from the lawmakers, the police responds overtly.
The fact that for 30 days this arm consistently has not been recorded and been returned, book has been returned, it is deemed to have been lost.
The lawmakers are clearly dissatisfied as they detect more loopholes and grey areas.
I'm not a policeman, but common sense tells me
You give me as an example
that you are wrong. You can't take that.
We are not going to hide anything, and I assure you that the force has done a lot, and they will not allow any of our arms to get missing.
We expect the Office of Inspector General of Police to appear before us again on Monday by 12 noon with vivid, comprehensive explanation as to these missing firearms.
Elsewhere in another committee, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, appeared before the Senate Committee on Capital Market.
There are 5 million people that invest in the stock market, in the stock exchange and the securities markets. It may not be enough, but it's a reasonable quantum.
The Senate Committee concludes by requesting the approval of 10 billion naira as special fund for literacy development in the capital market. From the National Assembly, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
So 2 matters which seem related, because first you have there the Senate Deputy Chief Whip, who is also the Vice Chairman, Senate Committee on Public Accounts, seeking scrutiny of the Nigeria Police Force over missing firearms. I think that's as a result of what has happened with the Auditor General's report. We also have the situation where Nigeria is said to have climbed up 1 point. 1 point is something, at least some people will say, on Transparency Index ranking. So we have 2 very gentlemen in our studios this morning to discuss this particular issue. We have Senator Peter Peter Onyekachi Nweboyi, who is the Deputy Chief Whip and also the Vice Chairman, Senate Committee on Public Accounts. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, my dear sister.
And we also have Mr. Gimba Suleiman Hassan, who is a Senior Program Officer at CISLAC and also of Transparency International Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us on Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well, so let me start with you, Senator, because I'm sure a lot of people saw what happened there yesterday, and they saw how you refuted the report of the police, which was brought before you. You seemed very dissatisfied with what the police was saying. What precisely had led to that?
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank the Channels family for this opportunity to throw more light on what we do as the eye of the people before the government. By law, the Public Account Committee is the only committee of the National Assembly that is set up pursuant to the constitutional provision of 1999, which is the grand norm. And we are saddled with the responsibility of auditing all public accounts, both personnel, finance, and materials used to serve Nigerian people. Consequently, we work with the Office of the Auditor General of the Federation, who from time to time does routine checks, you can call it audit, of all government assets and funds. And we are examining 2019 report till date, which is about 4 to 5 years audit report of the Office of Auditor General of the Federation. So in the course of that briefing, particularly in 2019 reports, we saw that 4,900 some fraction firearms, mainly AK-47 and other high-powered firearms, were missing within the police force. And the Office of the General wrote a letter to the then Inspector General of Police to provide explanations as to the whereabouts of these firearms, because these firearms were actually purchased with the public fund. So the public, deserve the explanation as to their whereabouts. But that invitation or that request for that clarification was not honored. So this time around, the report came up again, and we were demanding that Nigerians need to know what happened. Then preliminarily, when we went into the matter, we discovered that some of these firearms were lost as a result of the killing of some of these men, which we prayed for God to accept their souls in heaven, because they paid the supreme price for us to be secured. So we appreciate those who are very gallantly in defending our country, and in the course of that, they died and their firearms were taken. So it goes without saying that a dead man is a conquered person. So it is a good explanation to those points. But unfortunately, the numbers that we have, based on the investigation report given to us, is less than 10%, less than 5% of what we're talking about. So that made us to be more curious to say, if we are missing 4,900 firearms and we have explanation to 10 or 15, then there is a big question mark there. It may not have happened under the watch of the current IGP. Everybody knows that, but being a public institution is a continuous process. He is under that obligation to explain to Nigerians, based on the records of handover he had, where he is not satisfied with the records of handover, he can ask for people in charge when these arms were lost. Because as a country, nothing is right unless it is right. We must be determined to do things differently so we can have different results. So if you're a senator, you must do your job in line with the constitutional provision. If you're a policeman, you must do your job in line with the constitutional provision. The same thing with people in the media. Everybody must sit up. The angels cannot come down from heaven to make our country, Nigeria, to be like the United States of America. It is we, the citizens. Is when we call a spade, that is when Nigeria will be good. And we must start somewhere. It is, and I want to also use the opportunity to call for reformation of Nigerian police. Last 2 weeks ago, in the course of my interview, I said I'm not supporting state police, because the Nigerian police is doing well. The Nigerian police has all it takes to protect everybody in this country. What they need is just two things: better welfare and manpower. So instead of splitting the police into states, which may be abused by politicians, increase the manpower of Nigerian police. We already have a very good institution that have always done well in the global community. So all we need to do is to encourage them more, increase their number, they will deliver.
Well, that is another conversation, I can tell you, and I know that if we go into state policing, it will take us away from what it is we really want to discuss. So let me come to you, Mr. Hassan. This is very closely related with what you do. The fact that there ought to be public accountability, there ought to be transparency in how it is that government conducts its business, isn't that right? And only recently, just yesterday, this report came out from Transparency International, and Nigeria has moved up just one notch. What does it mean? Does it mean that we're doing something right, or does it mean that, what exactly does it mean?
All right, I think it's a mixture of both.
It's a mixture
of both, yes. We have actually moved 5 places up. And in terms of the overall score, we have gained an extra point. In 2023, it was 25 points. And the last year, that's 2024, the one that we just released yesterday, we got 26 points over 100. So the Corruption Perception Index is gotten based on surveys of business leaders and then the public institutions. It's a confidential process, and even members of CISLAC, that's Transparency International in Nigeria, were not privy to the information until it's released. So in terms of moving up, I think it's a good thing, but there are still major gaps that needs to be filled, especially in terms of accountability, that's one. And then there is an issue that has been persistent in Nigeria for, I think, for as long as I've been reading the news, which is the issue of oil theft. That's one. You have the issue of public procurement, I think is closely related to what you have been asking the distinguished senator. And then a lot of issues actually need improvement. So we don't have to see it as a major thing. Yes, it's a positive pointer because the ICPC has done well in the past year. EFCC also a bit, although mostly it's related to the Yahoo Boys, which is not public corruption, but the anti-corruption agencies are doing well. But there is no political will from the part of the executive to empower them to continue to do the good work they are doing and then to improve on it. And then if you look at it, they don't have life assurance, which is a major issue, especially given that I think 2 members of the EFCC have been killed, I think, on duty. There was an issue in Ibadan where they went into a house at night and all that. Even if their approach can be cautioned, it shows the lack of security and then also the systemic changes that can be made in the fight against corruption in this country.
Well, I had the privilege to, ask the president a question around corruption just in December when he granted a media chat. And, his focus seems to be about preventing corruption rather than going after those who have been found to be corrupt. From your own perspective, as somebody who's been in this space for a long time, what approach would you recommend the most for Nigeria? Because he believes that if he's able to pay people better, if he's able to, block loopholes, if he's able to centralize collection of funds, etc., the avenues for corruption will be fewer and perhaps will rank better. Do you really believe in that particular approach?
Yes, I actually believe it, and then I think it actually kind of contributed to Nigeria gaining some positivity in the recent ranking. For starts, the what do you call it? Sorry,
TSA.
Not the TSA. I'm trying to talk in terms of asset declaration. For instance, yes, it's something now that has been digitalized, so which makes it easier for public officials to contribute, and then I think that's a positive pointer. But then you have issues now of anticipatory declaration, which is rampant. Someone that hasn't gotten into office will declare trillions of naira or billions of naira, which he actually doesn't have, with the intention that if the person goes into office, he can make that amount and then fill it up. So it will be like the money has always been there. So I think trying to prevent this is going to be really crucial in the fight against corruption.
Well, a very tough one. I know that my colleague Ayo will have a lot of questions for Senator Nweboyi because he is very, very into the Auditor General's report. So Ayo, over to you.
Well, thank you, Maokwe. Senator, please don't mind Maokwe. Don't let it look like you're here for an exam, your job question. But, really, I'd like you to give us some clarity. There's a report, as at yesterday, which says that according to the Auditor General's report, the police lost about 449 firearms as of 2018, but the rider to it is that 3,907 were unaccounted for as at 2020. This is what we believe that you were told. I'd like to have some clarity on that, please.
Thank you so very much, my dear brother. What we are considering is the report of the Office of the General of the Federation from 2019 till date. Yes, he gave us an insight of what they had as at 2018, but what is before us is the report from 2019 till date. And in that report, 3,907 firearms, mainly AK-47, is missing within the Nigerian police force. And that is what we are discussing. The one of 8,000 is not before us, though he made reference to it. That is the rep of Auditor General of the Federation. However, like I said earlier, when we probed further as to the whereabouts of these firearms, we discovered that some were lost as a result of the death of the officers that were holding them. And these people paid the supreme price, and we should honor them as a nation. However, over 99% is unaccounted for. And that is why we asked the AIG, who is representing the IG, to go and come back and give us facts on this, because all we need to know is to give account as to the whereabouts of these firearms. If all the officers were all killed, and that is why the firearms were lost, we need to know. If the firearms have been hoarded somewhere, we need to know. If some were recovered after the report, because I know that many may have been recovered after the report, Nigerians need to know. We need this information because it will guide us in making our budgets. Because if Nigerian police is losing such a number of arms, it is important that they be supported, to replace these firearms.
All right, Senator, one of the things that's been an issue for me, forgive me, is the length of time it takes for us to consider the Auditor General's report. For instance, you're just telling us now that your committee is looking at the 2019-2020 Auditor General's report. That's about 6-7 years ago. Now, so there are those who will be wondering, Senator, if there is anything really that can come out of the report that you're whatever it is, the findings that you're going to make, what's going to change? Because over time, what we have seen is that we don't get to look at the Auditor General's report. We don't even hear about the Auditor General's report for another 2, 3, 4 years down the line after the fact. So is there a plan or a process to redress that process?
Thank you so very much. All I can tell you is that the 10th Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is out to address all these lapses and the weakness in the internal system of our job as Parliament. You agree with me that the 10th Senate is barely a year plus some months, and this thing was the 2019 even to 2022 ought to have been treated by the 9th Senate, but that was not done. And that is why the 10th Senate, is starting from where the 9th Senate stopped. And that we are treating 2019 report does not mean that we have not done anything for 2022, 2023. We are picking them randomly based on the strength of the issue, just like the one we are talking about. So we start with the big issues, and then later we can go back to the small issues. So Nigerians should expect something different. Because when you look at the faces you are seeing today in the Nigerian Senate, probably you didn't see some of them before now. That is true that this is a new dawn. Nigerian youths are out to know what is happening to our country. The area of lapses must be corrected. We are not here to probe anybody or to indict anybody, but what we are saying is that everybody must be on his or her toes when they are serving the public. believing that we are all equal before the law. That is the principle of rule of law. So this time around, things must be done properly. So Nigerians should expect something positive from all these reports we are considering, because we are going to make them public.
Let me ask Mr. Hassan, what's your reaction to that? What's your take on that? The fact that, on the one hand, I mean, you've been looking at the Corruption Perception Index for quite a while, at least your agency has. And on the other hand is the fact that one of the instruments of checking corruption in the country is the Auditor General's report. But the years between which the report is released and the time it is considered, or rather the report is surveyed and the time it is being considered, there's quite a distance in between. What's your take on that?
Okay, I think it all goes down to how efficient the government is, because most of these things are not given attention until maybe at some later time when they might not even become too relevant in the public sphere. But for the issue of arms now, I think no time is passed for it. I know the earlier the better, but it can never be late to visit it, because this is something that directly deals with the security and for the lives and properties of Nigerians. And then if you look at it, Section 85 has given the Auditor General the power to actually audit those accounts. And then Section 88 of the Constitution, the power for the National Assembly to have that oversight over public accounts. But what is troubling is this issue is something that cannot be allowed to go past, because it doesn't only affect Nigeria. It affects the whole of West Africa, because arms unaccounted for, especially for that high amount of arms, is going to be troublesome for the region, especially with all the tension that is probably going on now.
I get that, Mr. Hassan. I will come back to it, but the question
Arms
is really
trade
about...
treaty now that Nigeria is... yes?
Yeah, I'll come back to that. But the issue that I'm taking you up on right now, beyond the fact that we're talking about the very dangerous and precarious situation of the arms, small arms, or whatever we want to call them, is the fact that this report is coming up 6 years behind. Now, there are those who should be questioned that have not been questioned. As the senator said, the previous assembly ought to have looked at it if the report had been ready on time. Whether or not the report was ready on time, that's another conversation altogether. But you are an anti-corruption civil society organization. What is your take on the fact, or maybe I should ask it this way, how significant do you think the Auditor General's report is, particularly the way we are using it or handling it in Nigeria today when the report doesn't come out on time?
Okay, I think I get you fully well now. I think the report is really significant because it allows us to hold public officials to account. And then the report being audited now, or maybe the National Assembly exercising its power of oversight at this point in time, 6 years after it should have done, is actually inexcusable. And then because this is a country where people are usually not held into account because they have left office and then they are no longer of interest to maybe the powers that be, the former Ninth Assembly, they are actually going to get away with it, and then nobody will be held to account.
Okay, Senator, let me come back to you on this. There are some civil society organizations that have moved considerations around the fact that, okay, maybe we need to have an audit commission. Maybe an audit commission will give the Auditor General's office a little more room to operate, a little more autonomy, a little more authority to be able to do its job with less fetters than it has now. What's your take on that?
Well, thank you so very much. You agree with me that, or you may not know, that the law regulating the office of Auditor General of the Federation as of today was as old as 1956. The ordinance of 1956 gave birth to the office of the General of the Federation, meaning that since 1956, we don't have our own local law to regulate the audit office. But be it as it may, we'll have a bill now, which is Ordinance Repeal Bill, which is going to repeal that ordinance of 1956, wherein we are going to look at so many issues surrounding the office of the Attorney General of the Federation. We may change the name, we may give them more powers, because that office is a very sensitive office. Like we can see yesterday, I commended them openly because I was impressed with the way they meticulously, put down their figures and facts, in the course of their job. So it's a very wonderful office that other anti-graft agencies can lean on to actually work, like AFCC, ICPC, and even the police. So by amending this law, we are going to look into it and give them more power, more especially as it relates to their independency, because it's only when that office is independent that they can actually function. And that is the basis of our move towards transparency and accountability in Nigeria.
Senator, over the years, and that's something that Mr. Hassan just mentioned, that most of the time, when anyone is indicted in the Auditor General's report, and I've been looking at these reports since 2015, the 2015 report, 2016, 2017, up until whichever is the most recent, there are indictments. I think it was 2017, the 2017 report had indictments that totaled 2-point-something trillion naira. Well, guess what? I do not recall anyone being penalized, anyone being punished, anyone being brought to book, anyone being called to account as a result of these indictments. What do you make of that, Senator?
Well, in public service, there are division of labor. While the Office of the General gives us reports, the Public Account Committee will look at the report and come up with a resolution which we are going to lay before the Senate plenary. If that resolution is carried by a majority of members of parliament, that will be addressed to the presidency or direct the appropriate anti-graft agency to go into full investigation and charge appropriately. So that is what we are doing. And like I said earlier, I may not know what happened before, but the 10th Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is out to do things differently. And any investigation we conduct, any findings we make, shall be made public. And be assured that the president, being a Democrat, will act on it. And those who have erred on the side of the law in the course of that audit will be made to refund their loots and also pay other prices as stipulated by the law.
Senator, it seems you have just validated what Mr. Hassan's fears were. The fact that most of the time people are indicted and nothing happens to them. And if the process you talked about now, from the public accounts to plenary to the presidency, is anything to go by, why should Nigerians trust that not only will you do things differently, but we'll get a completely different result? How do we know that this is not going to be treated as another family affair when some members of a political party or members of the of friends of governments are indicted?
No. One thing you should have at the back of your mind is that the 10th Senate are out to do the will of Nigerians. Remember I said ab initio that if you want a different result, you must change your modus operandi, the way you do things. If reports have been laid under the carpet before now, people like us, you should know that we will not allow that to happen again. Every report we do in public account, I want to assure you that at the end of our first 4 years, you will see where we are. And I would like you to confront me with any that we have not taken to its conclusion. So Nigeria should know that this is a new set of leaders led by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who is a good man and who has proven himself economically, and a Democrat for that matter. A Democrat believes in rule of law, and that makes him different from other presidents who had. This is a man that is thinking outside the box. He met a very bad, in fact, a dying economy. But being a man that thinks outside the box, he came up with so many economic policies. Some may be harsh at the beginning, like fuel subsidy, but today you will tell me, you agree with me that the price of fuel is coming down and it continue to go down because of the measures he has put in place. So, and he's also coming up with this tax reform, though that is a discussion of another day. If you study the tax reform and you will agree with it. Personally, I was against it at the beginning, but I took time, 2-3 days to study the law, and I know that this bill is a welcome development. In fact, it's going to be a very solid foundation for our economic prosperity as a country. Thank you.
All right. Well, Mr. Hassan, are you as optimistic as the senator is on this issue?
Sir?
Are you as optimistic as the senator? Do you agree with him? Do you trust that indeed he is going to, keep his word?
Yes, I'm a bit optimistic that if there is the political will, this is something that can be done. But my major challenge now is most of these issues that have been discussed that are of public interest, enough consultation is not being done to get the opinion of the public. And I think no matter how good reforms are, if the public are not well informed and are not carried along, then it should be delayed until the public have their own input in it, because these are matters that directly affect them. And in terms of the creation of the audit commission that was suggested, I think we have far too many agencies, given that Oransaye report has still not been fully implemented. These are things that offices under ministries can actually handle. All we have to do is to provide the right platform for these offices to go and carry out the work, and then to make them more institutional than individualized as they are in the current form. Because if an active person is heading an office, the office will be active. And then if another person comes in, the office dies down. So we have to make our institutions capable of going on their own, irrespective of whoever comes into that office. He has to respect those standards that are in the office, and then he has to carry out the objectives for which that office is being set out for. And then another issue that has been of major concern to us is appointment into boards now for all these anti-corruption agencies. You find that all these boards are headed by politicians, and then the members of those boards are politicians who were appointed there based on favors, and then the agency is sort of answerable to that board. So there has to be a way where appointment into these positions are done in such a way that transparent people with no political leanings are appointed into anti-corruption agencies to actually work or to serve on the board. And then in terms of their appointment, you see appointment being sold in this Abuja, and then it involves some of these anti-corruption agencies. And when someone has to pay to get a job, I think his major focus when he comes in is maybe to recoup the money he spent and then to actually maybe get profit. So these are systematic issues that needs to be looked at and addressed if we are going to be serious about the fight against corruption in Nigeria.
Indeed. Well, Senator, let me quickly take you up on the issue of the 29. You have said that, well, it's not like as if you're not looking at other reports at the same time. Are you saying that other reports from the Auditor General's office is already out, but you're looking at just 2019 for now?
No, we are looking at them randomly, like we have 2019, we have 2020, we have 2021. We also have 2022, and I think 2023 is ready.
Okay, but
yes. We are looking at it at the same time.
Okay.
Simultaneously.
All at the same time?
Yes.
Well, in this particular instance, you have the police, the Inspector General of Police was at your summoning was at the committee meeting yesterday at your BES. Yes, and that was after several invitations to him. Clearly, you were not satisfied with the explanations that his deputies or his lieutenants gave, and you have asked him to come back on Monday. Is that correct?
That is what we said.
You're sure that this is not going to be settled behind the scenes?
No, it's before the public domain. And nothing is hidden under the sun. Mm-hmm. And
some things are hidden. You know, sometimes the press will be excused from the room.
No, but anything that gets to public account must be to public knowledge. That is why when some people called for closed door session, majority of the senators said no to it, because that's a public account. Anything not done within the Auditor General's investigation, corrections done, before bringing to us. That is the last bus stop. So, our findings will be referred to the plenary and will write to presidency.
Are you saying that anything that is brought before public accounts must be heard in public?
That is it.
That is interesting. I mean, I think that, journalists can also, take a hold of that.
We have open door.
Open door. Well, we're glad that.
Hours.
We're glad that you're here. I'm just a little curious as to whether the Public Accounts Committee is very...
Even though citizens are invited to be part of it.
Of the Public Accounts.
You can ask questions. Because you're in Nigeria. Yes.
Okay.
That's the essence of it. That's why we have a special hall. We have a special hall. It's only our committee that has a designated room. Because it's created by the Constitution. That is the last bus stop of all committees. So far, you're a public official, you must account for what you did.
Are you aware of just how, because some people will say, how is it that we have all of these institutions, yet corruption is still so rampant?
That is what we are saying, my sister. And that corruption cannot be traced to one man. It's traceable to all Nigerians. And that calls for the need for our mindset, change of mindset. Some of us have visited other developed countries, US, Canada, what have you. Go and read your history. What happened? What happened is that at a point they said, let's do things this way. Please, everybody, let's do things this way. And today they are seeing the result. And that's what we are calling upon Nigerians. Let's do things differently. Let's fight corruption. Be satisfied with what we have. Strive more. You will get more. That is what the new tax bill is talking about. It's going to encourage competition, economic competition within the member states, because it's going to be the more you work, the more you eat.
So the Public Accounts Committee of the 10th Assembly, is it very aware of the role it has to play in helping Nigeria curb corruption?
That is what we are doing. And you can give it to us. That's what we are doing. There are other issues bigger than this. And we invite you to come and watch. Like we have issue with the printing and minting press of Nigeria. Trillions were used to print billions. It's before us.
That's from the 2023 report.
Yes, we're going to look at that. And so many others. Nigerian Port Authority. Name them. Billions and trillions of naira. And we'll have the political will, like my friend said. People like us, we have that political will to speak the unspeakable, in as much as it will help Nigerians. We are ready. The 10th Senate is for that.
I'm looking at some of the areas of weaknesses that Transparency International has listed, which still makes Nigeria the ranking 36th most corrupt country in the world. You have, ranging from judicial corruption, state capture, nepotism, oil theft, subsidy fraud, corruption in the power sector, public procurement, tax evasion, selective tax waivers. These are some of the things that, for me, I think what stands out the most here is judicial corruption and state capture. These are very grievous allegations when they say that, the state has been captured. But especially the levels of state have been captured by politicians. It is a very grievous one. Is the Public Procurement Committee aware of, let's say, the Public Accounts Committee aware of, the enormous task ahead in terms of bringing this down?
We are very much aware. And I must tell you, we are prepared to give Nigerians the needed result. All those things you mentioned, they are not doing. We are all aware. We're all aware. And that is why I called for reset of mindset of everybody. You can see so many dimensions that the corruption is coming from, meaning that everybody is involved.
Apart from the Inspector General of Police, who else have you invited, or who else will you be inviting the next couple of days?
Well, we have, of course, the CG Custom is before us. And so many, almost all the agencies are before us. So as you monitor our activities, you'll be getting reports. Because we are the only committee that works 6 times in a week. We work from Monday to Saturday. Because of the volume of work we have.
Okay. Mr. Hassan, some people will say that this is dealing with perception, that this corruption index is dealing with perception, how Nigerians perceive their country to be. But Nigeria is peopled and populated by Nigerians. For those who are concerned about this, what are some of the things you think they can begin to do, to see how we can bring this, stem this tide of corruption in our country?
Okay, I think the major thing that we have to concentrate and advocate for is an independent judiciary and a strengthened judiciary. Because if we have gotten a judiciary that works for the poor people, that works for everyone in fairness and justice, that can be said to be the last of the common man.
Some people say, what's making it not independent now?
Well, I don't think we have time to go fully into that. But if you look at what the judiciary has become over the past few years, I'm a lawyer, so the expectation going through a degree in law school was to come and meet a perfect system where we stand for the oppressed. But what is happening now is forum shopping has increased. People look for the courts to go to because they know this judge, this is his weakness, the other judge, this is what he needs. And apart from that, there is perception that some people have actually pocketed judges. And so there are people that no matter how strong your case is, if you go to court against them in this Nigeria, you will definitely lose. And we have seen contrary rulings, judgments being dished out everywhere. And then people actually, case that is happening in Kano, someone will go to Abuja, case that someone will come to Abuja. That forum shopping, these are things that need to be stopped. It has to be that if the Supreme Court said A is A, then the lower courts need to toe in line. But now we see lower courts even giving contrary judgment to what the Supreme Court has said, and then there are no consequences for this whatsoever.
Well, we have to thank you both. I think as a signal to say time off, but we have to thank you both for coming on Sunrise Early this morning. The fight against corruption is something that involves all hands on deck, and Senator, we certainly will be keeping in touch with you. You've invited the press, and we thank you so much for coming this morning. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. We've been speaking with Senator Onyeka Chinweboy, who's the Senate Deputy Chief Whip, and also the Vice Chairman, Senate Committee on Public Accounts. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And we've also had with us Mr. Gimba Suleiman Hassan, who was the Senior Program Officer at CISLAC and also with Transparency International Nigeria. Thank you once more for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we'll be talking business for the next 30 minutes on Sunrise Daily, and I know that John Mekwa cannot wait to give you all the details. Please stay with us.
That's right, Mark. John Mekwa cannot wait. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the NGX studio, Channel's NGX studio from Lagos. This is where we're doing business, 30 minutes business this morning from. So you're welcome. Let's spend the next 30 minutes doing some serious business, starting from the global space. We tell that oil prices extended gains on Tuesday amid concerns over Russian and Iranian oil supply and sanction threats, despite worries that escalating trade tariffs could dampen global economic growth. Look at the numbers for this morning. It's a whole $1.11 that has been added to Brent. That's about 1.46%, and it's now at $76.78. Yesterday about this time we're talking about 75, so it's going up, and we know this the implication to all of this. United States West Texas Intermediate crude also gained 99 cents. That's about 1.37% to $73.31. Both contracts posted gains of near 2% in the prior session after 3 weekly losses. We know that in the last 3 weeks we've had a lot of uncertainty, movement, and drop after President Trump took over the White House. Well, shipping of Russian oil to China and India, which is the world's major oil importers, has been significantly disrupted by U.S. sanctions last month, targeting tankers, producers, and insurers. Adding to supply jitters are U.S. sanctions on networks shipping Iranian oil to China after President Trump restored his maximum pressure on Iranian oil export last week. But countering the price gains is the latest tariff that he announced on aluminum. He did that on Monday to the United States, and it says it's going to aid struggling industries in the country. That's in the United States. The tariff will hit millions of tons of steel and aluminum imports from Canada, Brazil, Mexico, South Korea, and other countries. So we'll talk about if Nigeria can get any chance, opportunity in all of this. That'll be a conversation later on the program. We'll come back home to the Naira now. We see that there was a depreciation on the NAFEX platform, lost 2 Naira 26 kobo. That's to close at 1,506 Naira 56 kobo. NFM opened on a bullish note with higher demand for FX, and this led to depreciation also on that. And so across all levels, we saw the Naira depreciating yesterday. On NFM, it lost 3 Naira 29 kobo to close at 1,503 Naira 7 kobo, and CBN it's also lost a whole lot, 11 Naira 10 kobo, closing at 1,513 Naira 10 kobo. But the good thing is still below 1,600. That's the level we've been having for some months now. And real estate is still making headlines in Nigeria. While there are outlooks for different sectors, the real estate also got some attention from Wema Board. They say that that's Wema Board Real Estate 2025 Outlook. And participants there harped on the potential of the sector in spurring economic recovery and importance of policies targeted at developing the built environment. According to Mr. Babatunde Fashola, former Minister of Works, Nigeria's real estate sector is ripe for exponential growth, and Wema Board is moving in the right direction.
In our economic environment, what we should be doing is not finger pointing, is not blaming this or blaming that. It's really about saying that, look, if this thing is growing at 3-point-something%, which parts of it are growing well? Which are the parts that are not so doing well? And then let us concentrate our energies on finding how we can drive growth in those other areas. And I think this is a progressive attitude. Let us look at what needs to be done and let's get on with it. And I think this is why this meeting, this convocation here is a commendable one. What should Wema Board then do? I think that's a question at the heart of this conversation. What new thing can Wema Board do? I think the answer lies in what Wema Board has already done in over 6 decades of her existence, from when I believe she was first known as Nabani Estates, before the change of name and the change of ownership. It is true that Wema Board has a mixed portfolio of properties from residential to commercial. But for my generation and for housing and related professions, the reputation of Wema Board that still endures is that of a commercial property developer. That's what I remember Wema Board for.
Mr. Babatunde Fashola, the former Minister of Works. Yesterday, there was a little bit of relief, maybe temporal, but the Nigeria Customs Service says that it has suspended the implementation of the 4% free on-board FOB charge on import as stipulated in the Nigeria Customs Service Act 2023. This decision follows some consultation, they say, with the Minister of Finance, Mr. Lawale Edun, and all the stakeholders. I'm sure you've seen NECA and all others talk against it. The suspension, they say, allows for further engagement on the implementation framework and align with the expiration of contracts with service providers. It also provides an opportunity to review the customs revenue framework. The Customs Service Act 2023 aims to address funding gaps by consolidating customs revenue sources and modernizing operations through digital solutions such as risk management systems, electronic data exchange, and non-intrusive inspection. And the implementation timeline will be communicated after stakeholder consultations. Well, we are still staying with the customs this morning. We want to talk about Authorized Economic Operator Program. It's one of their programs, and we have joining us from our Abuja studio the Deputy Controller General, Tariff and Trade Department with the Nigeria Custom DCG, Caroline Niagwan, joins us, as well as the National Public Relations Officer of the Nigeria Customs Service, Assistant Controller of Customs, Abdullahi Maywada. Good morning, officers, and thank you so much for coming on Business Morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Good to have you. So let's start with DCG, Caroline. Tell us about what this program is about. I'm sure for some viewers, perhaps this is the first time they're hearing about it.
Thank you. The Authorized Economic Operator Program, AEO, is actually an initiative of the World Customs Organization, WCO, under the Safe Framework of Standard. It aims to enhance the security of the international supply chain as well as facilitate legitimate trade. Importers are given this status when they meet specific safety and security standards. They are known as trusted importers who have been compliant and reliable. And there are several benefits that come with this status. And these benefits include expedited customs clearance, simplified customs procedures, as well as reduction in cost of clearance. It also allows the importers to have enhanced trade opportunities.
All right, so let me come to PRO now. I hear that different categories of it. Could you tell us the different categories and how businesses can benefit from these categories?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Let me start by saying, as a rider to what my DCG have said, the essence of AEO is to fast track, to give preferential treatment, to give VIP treatment to compliant traders. So we have two broad categories of AEO. We have AEO simplified. And because the essence is trade facilitation, and if you get the definition of trade facilitation, it's about some elements, simplification, standardization, harmonization, automation of custom processes and procedure. So that element of simplification, that is what gives the first category of AU, that is simplified AU. And the other category is about safety and security. Now, the AU that has to do with safety and security, if you remember, the DCG said, gave a background about the safe framework of standard, security of supply chain, and so on. So the AU get its own history back to the September 11 attack, and which led to a program developed by WCO in 2005 that led to the emergence of this kind of program. So we have two broad categories: AU simplified, which is about simplification, then AU security and safety. Thank you.
All right, you talked about the World Customs Organization, and we know that the issue of trade now doesn't seem very friendly globally because of some pronouncements by President Donald Trump. What are their perspectives, talking about World Trade Organization, World Customs Service, and all that? What are they doing? Are they already adopting this program that you're telling us about?
Thank you. For the WCO, Actually, this program is an initiative of WCO, but has also already been adopted by the World Trade Organization. It can be found in the World Trade Organization Trade Facilitation Agreement, where it is stipulated that fast clearance of goods are necessary for the goods to be released quickly. And in this same trade facilitation agreement, you have where customs have to collaborate with other government agencies on trade facilitation issues as well as compliance issues. So the World Trade Organization has adopted this very WCO initiative. That is why we have the AEO program also stipulated in the World Trade Organization Article 7.7, whereby all these parameters have to come to play together for the AEO to succeed. So the AEO program is actually a WCO and a WTO initiative.
Yeah, but if you could tell us how it's working there, maybe paint a picture for us. What countries are adopting it? How does it work with the WTO and the other customs services?
There are several countries like the UK, South Africa, Rwanda, Uganda are already doing this program. For the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement, which Nigeria is a signatory, it allows for goods to be for trade facilitation, which is very, very important. As the volume of goods are increasing, so also customs administrations need to facilitate the movements of these goods. So it is an initiative that would allow compliant and reliable traders to be able to clear their goods quickly out of customs control. As long as they have been found to be reliable, to be compliant, they are trusted. So customs control is reduced. And that is how this particular program is done in all these countries. It is actually very necessary for us to facilitate trade because of the volume of trade that has grown globally.
Yeah, well, I mean, when we hear customs control is reduced, I'm sure a lot of people will be happy about that because we know more interaction and more control, also leads to some lack of transparency. But let me go to the national PRO now to tell us status in Nigeria, the status of implementation of the AEO program in Nigeria. Where are we now?
Well, let me start by saying the status of AEO implementation in Nigeria can date back to what we are doing before the piloting of the current AEO. Initially, we don't have a legal framework that backed what we are doing. So we have a quasi form of AEO, which is called Fast Track. Fast Track is not really an AEO, but it's also a trade facilitation tool which compliant traders are also leveraged to fast track the movement of their goods. Now, the new law, which is the Nigeria Customs Service Act 2023, gave us the power to carry out AEO. Now, if you look at Part 12, Section 108 to Section 112 of the Nigeria Customs Service Act 2023 stipulated how AEO is going to be done, the guidelines of AEO, as well as what you need to do to get on board on those two categories of AEO. So now the first thing is to get the legal framework. Then the second issue is the political will. And the political will comes from the emergence of the Comptroller General of Customs, Bashir Adewale Edeni. He set up a technical working group from Customs, and those technical working group in collaboration with World Customs Organization, the World Bank Group, and so many agencies. We carried out so many diagnostic missions. We carried out benchmarking mission. We developed protocols for the AEO program. We developed a website for it, and we started piloting. And the piloting phase of that AEO, which is a criteria for you to move into the main launching of AEO, we started with 6 companies. And these 6 companies were drawn from different areas of trade, and they have shown some level of compliance. They have undergone a kind of rigorous audit process to make sure that they have financial solvency and they can have channels of communication. with customs, and they have a kind of a strong financial base. So we have done that. We have done the piloting, and for over a year, this pilot test is successful. And that is why we are preparing for effective or proper launch of the AEO. So we have 6 companies in the pilot stage.
All right. So what do these companies or others, what do they stand to gain? Because I'm sure businesses listening to this conversation will ask, so what comes differently for me? What's my benefits?
Well, what they need to say is, one, as the DCG have stated, it's one, there will be reduction in control. Now, if you believe you have trust that trader is compliant, which means you are going to reduce the level of check, the level of inspection. You are going to give him preferential treatment in the port. They have designated lanes that they are going to follow, and expedited clearance of those goods. I think the main benefit is, which will in turn reduce the costs of clearance, because if you are able to release your good within some hours or within some days, while others that are not compliant would be subjected to rigorous check, will be subjected to proper inspection, which means reduction in that delay, simplification in the procedures, will enhance a kind of turnover in the business process. What they are receiving in summary is preferential treatment, is VIP treatment, is expedited release of their cargoes.
Yeah, DCG, doesn't this contrast or compete with the fast track regime? Because these are supposed to be some of the benefits of beneficiaries of fast track regime.
There is actually a difference between the fast track regime and the AEO. For the fast track regime, the importers or beneficiaries are allowed to take their goods to their premises, but those goods are subjected to inspections. While for the authorized economic operators, their goods are not subjected to inspections because they have been profiled, they have been checked, their declarations have been looked at, and they have been seen to be reliable, they have been seen to be compliant, and we trust them. And these AEO beneficiaries also have integrity because they also disclose by themselves when they have infractions and then pay up the liabilities.
All right, so who are the stakeholders in the value chain of this program? Who are those concerned? Who are those who will make it work? Of course, led by the Customs Service.
The beneficiaries cut across several factors, such as importers, SMEs, freight forwarders, and logistic companies.
All right, and of course the businesses, but how can businesses initiate, if they want to be beneficiaries of this program? How do they get in? Where does it start from?
First and foremost, they start by applying. If they're eligible businesses, they apply to the customs to be adopted into this program. But they also have to meet some certain requirements, which are very, very important. They have to have demonstrated that they have met compliance and tax customs. They have been compliant to customs and tax requirements. For example, they must have been seen to have accurately completed and submitted documentations, which include commercial invoices, packing lists, certificate of origin. They must have also submitted declarations that have correct classifications, as well as paid their taxes and duties accurately and on time. And they must also have proper record keeping, with which they would have to quickly produce when customs decides to audit their companies. They are also required to have proven financial solvency. They must have financial guarantee. They must also maintain adequate security and safety standards, because the idea here is security of the international supply chain. So they must have maintained this safety and security standards in their companies. They must also have established a channel of communication between them and the service, where they would have to voluntarily disclose when they have infractions.
All right, DCG Caroline Yagwa, the Deputy Controller General, Tariff and Trade Department of Nigeria Customs Service. Thank you so much, as well as Assistant Controller of Customs Abdullahi Maiwada. He is the National Public Relations Officer of the Customs Service. Thank you so much, and we wish you the very best in the implementation of the program.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Well, we're still discussing trade. I have right here in the studio, well, someone from the private sector, from the customs, obviously, even though you have a color close to them. Well, we have Chimenem Nwoka. Chineme Nwoka is a co-founder and chief executive officer of Freeze Africa. You are into digital trade and all of that. Now, we hear customs there. They are talking about trade. We see what's happening globally. We hear President Donald Trump every day. The customs here, they're trying to give businesses the assurance that there can be less control, more transparency in the system. For you, with all the news going on and the tariff and trade war and all of that, are there opportunities for Nigerian businesses?
Definitely. I think there are lots of opportunities with everything happening in America. So Trump has added what I call entropy to the system, things like tariffs and trying to create what he sees as a stronger future for America. I think we as Africans and Nigerians have to do the same. And take advantage of the opportunities that are left by these challenges. So I think the first round of tariffs came up with energy imports and exports between Canada, United States, and China. And I think China is about the largest
importer. Yes, there.
Yeah. And then Nigeria has a lot of coal. These are just like some low-hanging fruits that you can take.
Nigeria has a lot of crude, but we haven't even serviced our domestic needs, so that leaves us hanging right there.
It leaves us hanging, but then, aside from crude, we have coal, we have other things that are needed, but it doesn't have to just be energy. Higher tariffs means that more countries are going to be looking at diversifying their input sources. So if they're importing primarily from the United States or the global north, they're going to be looking other places that might even be cheaper even for them to work with. Aside that, there's probably the call for less trade with the dollar. And if Trump continues with his policy on tariffs and this trade war, there's probably going to be more calls for that. So you're already seeing the BRICS nations trying to create a chart of working with their own currencies for trade. You already have the European Union, which is already a big bloc for trade. And Africa, we have AFCFTA, we have PAPS coming up. So I'm sure they're going to be more, aside looking at diversifying their input sources, but trying to encourage more trade in other currencies apart from the dollar. And then Nigeria can take advantage of this. I think we already have an agreement with China for the Chinese yuan and renminbi swap agreement, and then try and diversify who we trade with other than America, as well as strengthening our trade with America as well.
Yeah, because I was having a conversation yesterday and someone was saying the farms seem to be emptying out in America. So who knows, by the time they send away all the migrants who work on the farms, then they might have to be importing food. That if, we can meet up to that, because having the product is one thing, but having it developed to a level of exports in meeting the standards is another thing.
True, that's true. We have so many, I wouldn't say problems, but we have so many areas for improvement that you can go with. But then first, with an increase in demand or potential increase in demand for Nigerian-made and African products, is going to result in more investment in that sector to take our products to at least global standard and at least allow us to be more competitive.
So when we talk about digital trade regulations across boards, who do you see as immediate potential partners for collaboration for Nigeria, with Nigeria, about maybe from the government and then the private sector?
I would say the government and the private sector. To be fair, it involves everybody. Everybody has a role to play. The SMEs, the large manufacturing companies, and even the consumers all have a role to play in us having a digital future when it comes to trade. But then I'll start with the government. There's the MLETR, what we call the Model Law on Electronic Trade Records, that's being adopted or adopted by about 100 countries, which Nigeria is a part of, but hasn't been implemented yet. Only been implemented by a few countries, Singapore, Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, and then England in 2023. I think that having the government to implement such a law would make it easier. I think the customs people were talking about monitoring transactions or monitoring trade documents allows them to do that, but allows for more auditability and trust for trade transactions in Africa, and even allowing access to financing, making financing easier. So I think that's probably the foundation layer the government has to do with. But then aside that is private sector, and I'm including banks in the private sector, have to be intentional about digitizing. So be intentional about putting data on certain systems and being able to share this data as opposed to being manual with paper, which is very restrictive. Aside it being restrictive, it allows so much opportunity for fraud and other risks that come into the trade process.
And I'm glad you mentioned the banks and you mentioned PAPs earlier, because payment system is also a challenge in all of this. Even trading, you talked about AfTA, within Africa seems to be a challenge, mostly because of payment system.
Exactly. I think Africa has to, talking about like taking advantage of the whole global trade war. Africa has to first be able to trade with itself first before it's really thinking outward. And PAPs is PAPs and AFCFTA are very good initiatives being put up, and then it will help in reducing the cost. So I think estimates have it about between 5 to 6% of the cost of sending payments for remittance based, and then for business payments about 2 to 3%. Having us trade in local African currencies and align that movement of money between different African countries would make it easier for trade to go, make it easier to meet the goals of the FCFTA.
Well, we hope that these things will work and go beyond papers and words, you know. Well, thank you so much, Tumene Mwoka, co-founder and chief executive officer of Breeze Africa.
Thank you so much.
All right, so that's it. It was a trade day today, yes. Global, local, domestic trade. That's what we've been talking about. I know that Malpe and Ayo, they have more current affairs and politics and all that waiting for you. But that's it. I'll be back here during Business Incorporated. Laddie will be in the studio. I'll be in this studio to give you some investment tips. That's at 1 p.m. You don't want to miss it. See you then.
That the telecommunication company have improved, on their service delivery, poor network, which Nigeria have been yearning for in years before embarking on the increase in tariff.
A brief debate for and against the motion ensues, and it is eventually adopted.
The last increase was done over a decade, over 10 years. And for somebody like I did say, coming from private sector, how do we expect them to increase their performance? Knowing that prices of virtually all the various indices have increased.
We are not saying tariffs should not be brought in, but not now. Let the telecom industry tell our people, let them show to us that what the people should be paying for is being given to them.
Well, that was a debate that ensued in the House of Reps yesterday with regards to the tariff increase for telecom services, which has already been approved by the National Communications Commission. But that is still sparking a debate. To be or not to be, the NCC has already approved a 50% tariff increase The question now is, what will be the effect of the debate that members of the House of Reps are having? Because they want this to be they want it to be on hold. You heard voices for and against. Well, this morning we're going to be getting another perspective of the matter, and Mr. Bosun Ayeni, who's a tech expert and also the CEO of Compumetric, is here with us in our Abuja studios. It's good to see you in person, not on Zoom. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigerians. It's good to see you as well.
Yes, so here we are. This conversation is still ongoing. We're wondering, I thought they had already been implemented. Is this not medicine after death?
Absolutely, it's medicine after death. You would recall when the initial announcement broke through, there are a couple of reactions, and the loudest voice perhaps was the Nigerian Labour Congress.
Yeah, that's they're going to
go on strike, and of course all that now is behind us. So I reckon that the debate at the assembly too would be managed. And
managed?
Managed, and it will be behind us. It has to be managed. I mean, the National Assembly cannot speak and they will be ignored. The National Assembly cannot pass resolution and they will not be engaged.
I'm a little skeptical when you use the word managed. Managed by who?
Concerns, well, the stakeholders, I'm sure the ministry will talk to them. I'm sure the Alton and the stakeholders will engage them, respond to their requests, provide clarification. And at the end of the day, the tariff will go through.
What I'm a little curious about is the reports we're now beginning to see, and I don't know if this has been confirmed. I mean, I'm not able, even though, yes, everyone is affected by this tariff increase. I'm unable to confirm now if this is true because of how I use my own data and how I use my own credits as well, as to how, yes, 50% was what was approved for by NCC, but some people are alleging that far much more is being charged by the telcos.
Yes, absolutely. The allegation is out there and it's somewhat real.
It's somewhat real?
Yeah, the first thing is that the telco themselves will acknowledge, and a couple of their top executives, if you talk to them, that the pricing mechanism is not as simple as it appears. So when they have to, and the policy trust of this administration, not wanting to increase price on the poor, is also being reflected in the pattern of pricing that the telcos are adjusting. So they are not making big increase on the lower level tariffs, so the 1 gig, the 2 gig. But those who do heavy lifting subscriptions are likely to see, and they are seeing, a much steeper increase in price, at least from the early stage changes we're seeing.
Oh, so it's graded as well?
Yes, so they are not applying
the same in the lower
rate.
Category. I'm not seeing it that clearly.
I don't think so. But, they are definitely not applying the same rate across board. And if you watch what NCC said to them, it says a maximum of 50%. But the real issue here is that people are now alleging that MTN particularly was called out, that I've done an increase that's more than 50%. So it's important to look into that very closely. From the data and the allegations out there, on face value, it appears to be true. But of course, professionals like us need to really look at it, do subscriptions, confirm the actual increase, and be indeed certain that this increase is what it is. But initial reaction out there is that a few of them have gone beyond the 50% threshold. But I would expect that NCC would correct that if that's the case.
Well, the House of Reps is actually saying that this should be put on hold. That's what they want. They want the implementation to be put on hold. How feasible is that?
Well, I mean, it's feasible. If everyone agrees to put it on hold, it will be put on hold. I'm sure if they insist that it should be put on hold, the operators will demand other waivers, other consideration to achieve their cost goals. At the end of the day, for a business, it's either you increase your revenue or you reduce your cost. So I'm sure which is unlikely, if the government says, oh, for this year, we will waive all your regulatory licenses, we will waive all your, this payment, and that will waive all the mast fees you need to pay. The telcos can look at it. Okay, now you're talking. We can wait a few more months. But my view and my position is that an increase is imminent. and an increase is somewhat deserving. The telcos have, the reason why I'm even having this debate is because telco is regulated. If it was not regulated, there would have been an increase since last year. Malpa, you guys travel all the time, the hotels you stay, the prices are up, the airlines, the prices are up. Everything that is not as regulated from a pricing perspective have already since adjusted prices, and we've adjusted to the prices and moved on. So the regulated guys are now facing a scenario where the lagging time for getting approval for their price change is now being faced with a lot of resistance, given that people have been hit by those services that are not regulated. So the increase should be allowed. However, the two things for me that my position would be a 50% single increase in an instance might not be and should not be the best way to handle it. The second thing is that the the regulators and the ministry should, on behalf of Nigerians, demand certain market interventions that would make life a bit more convenient for people to be able to handle the price changes.
Mm-hmm. Well, quite a number of things are just, swirling in my head, because as we were speaking, I was just asking and wondering, if this is what Nigerians can handle, really. It's a lot to take on almost every front. As you said, there have been so many increases, and of course, many businesses have had to adjust correspondingly. But when you look at incomes, and that's where the NLC, was really taking an issue with, all of these increases, that when you look at what it is that people are taking home, it's nothing compared with what they have to contend with. How do you think that, consumers can cope with all of this?
Well, the income parity is a big challenge for Nigeria. If we even compare that with what happens in most of Africa, talk less of more developed countries. First, these prices we are seeing are now global competitive level pricing. So this 50% goes through, it takes 1 gig average data price in Nigeria to the same level as what you pay in the UK. And it takes it to the same level as what's happening in Kenya. Just a few countries in Africa would be just a notch or two higher than Nigeria. And if you compare this with the trajectory that the Nigeria economy is going in terms of population, growth pattern, country mix in terms of religion and all of that, if you follow the patterns of countries like India, Philippines, and Pakistan and all those kind of countries, we are already far more expensive than what they are paying. So it is what it is. Nigeria is different. We need to look at what we need to deal with. And that is why when Labour is agitating, if you ask me, Labour should more constrain their argument to the salary compensation fee structure for people to be able to cope. So what I think Labour needs to do is they need to engage government. They don't have to wait for the next 4 years or 5 years for their cycle of salary minimum wage
They just
reduction.
had one last year.
Yeah, they can't wait. They can't wait for 5 years. Look, it's going to impact us. I'm an employer of labor, private sector. We are constantly looking at what we pay our people and having to do adjustment. I'm still having those kind of debates in my organization. So if government does a new adjustment in a year or so, which I think is necessary, then people like us would also have to adjust. But at the end, the service, these fees are passed to people. It's a famous American president that says that at the end of the day, companies don't pay taxes. It's citizens that pay the taxes. So at the end of the day, big corporations will find a way to pass on their fees, their costs, their taxes to the citizens. Those who cannot would reduce their income, and then perhaps a few would fold up because they can't cope with the economic situation. But it's not all gloom. If you look at what's happening in the country in terms of tariffs and all of that, the telco sector, even if you focus on that, if we then bring in what's happening with CBN and ATM fee adjustment, there are certain wins that we have seen. And the telecom sector, for example, one of the quick wins we saw in that sector in the first 5 years is human capacity. Nigerians are providing services in telecoms all over the world, Middle East, a lot of places, MTN and all of the telcos that were able to ramp up skills and use a lot of Nigerians who stepped up in the early 2000s to provide competent services. I've been exported to different parts of the world, providing these skills and been working as expatriate and contributing obviously to remittances. To the country. So, and the value chain in the country as well is something that has been quite remarkable in terms of GDP contribution and people able to just fend for themselves. I know this is something different, but you cannot look at the success, for example, in the payment space without telecom services, because everything rides on communication. Almost everything in the fintech payment space rides on communication. So there are wins, there are successes, but how do we sustain that? How do we ensure that people are able to cope with the tariff changes? The reason people are not screaming in Nigeria, to be honest, is that the people who are still earning more than what they need to spend in terms of have a little bit of disposable income are facing more and more pressures, having to support more and more people. And that is something that is not captured in the economic calculation. So when people say economics theories fail in Nigeria, it's not true. It's just that there are components to the equation that the analysts do not capture, do not put into consideration in arriving at their position. And it's huge. The government lately have been talking about foreign direct investment, foreign direct inflow remittances. And they're saying barely about 10% of remittances is captured when they do the calculation. But now they've zoomed in on it, looked at it, tried to understand how else do people handle remittances. And it's becoming clear that when you do the numbers in Nigeria, they don't reflect the true situation because the input values you're putting into those equations are wrong. It's not that the economics principles don't work in Nigeria.
The input value, in what sense precisely? Is it that we're not seeing all of it, or people are using other sources, or they're using, what precisely are we not seeing clearly?
Both. So if you look at disposable income or employment rate in the country, the people would, of course, it was just adjusted recently, but there are so many people in Nigeria that don't have a job or they're underemployed, but they are spending 3-4 times their salaries. That difference is coming from somebody. It's coming from somewhere, which is able to keep them afloat. Now, that extra income they get is not captured in this computation. And this is where, for example, the challenge comes in. Like the Economic Reform Committee of the government have acknowledged, for example, that they are going to be working on foreign remittances.
Yeah, that foreign remittances is one. When you just talked about other sources of income for Nigerians, I was going to ask, have we taken also into cognizance, I hate to say this, but it's a reality, the economy of corruption and its influence, its impact on our economy as well, perhaps not giving us a true state of things?
It is a factor. Corruption is in every country, but if you look at it relative to the size of our economy, we're up there, obviously, from also several indicators among most corrupt countries that global reports have declared. So if you then look at those numbers, corruptly earned money going into all sort of investment and private spending and all of that, and most times they are not, again, captured as part of the total economic, they are not accounted for. So there are several of these indicators. Yes, if you were to do something a bit more accurate, one would expect a good economics or someone doing any AI computation to estimate different values and look at different scenarios and assume that if this different other variables are these values, what's the impact? And then you can carry out a proper research to be able to tell, a more accurate prediction of what these values are and then what their impact are on all of this. But certainly, going forward, more changes, more increases will come across different services, and Nigerians will need to further tighten our belts to be able to cope.
You made reference to the CBN hikes on ATM usage, ATM charges, which has now been upped to 100 naira for every 20,000 naira. That came with some uproar, but some people say it's a misunderstanding that what the CBN is trying to do is break the monopoly of POS operators. I don't know if you see any any sense in that sort of analysis? What precisely is going on here? Why is the CBN getting involved in ATM charges?
Well, first things first, let's clarify that the CBN have always been involved in ATM charges. And early 2000, thereabout, when ATM as we now know it was introduced on a large scale in Nigeria. And I think we have to give credit, I'll have to mention them, to a company like IntoSwitch. You know, the today's online real-time large-scale ATM deployment was made, you know, possible by the work they did. Of course, before that, there've been ATMs in the economy, very little quantity, mostly offline or mostly bank branch only, and so on. Now, at that time, when the fee was being fixed for withdrawals on an ATM, even then, early 2000, mid 2000, it was fixed at 100 naira per transaction at that time. And I remember very clearly the CEO of IntoSwitch making a case for why it has to be 100 naira. The argument then was that for the convenience of putting a machine close to you where you don't have to travel to the next bank branch and pay the transportation cost, 100 naira just seemed like a fair fee to charge. You know, sometimes in technology, regulation lag behind technology. So that was the case at that time. So the 100 naira wasn't really a CBN imposed fee at the time. And it was also a fee that was shared and structured among the stakeholder, issuer, acquirer, and the switch. So they kind of split this revenue. So now what CBN is doing, truth be told, is that CBN is trying to correct its own policy. I won't say revert itself, but I'll call it a correction. Now, the correction is what we are seeing. And if you compare the role the banks are playing versus the role the telcos are playing with NCC, the banks are lining up very squarely behind CBN, allowing CBN do all the talking. But this charge is clearly to protect the bank as against mobile money operator or just PSSP or people who have agency banking licenses who are cashing in on the current charges for POS, cash in, cash out operation that we see in the market. Now, banks...
Sorry, are you saying that there's been no incentive for banks to make sure that money has been available in ATM machines? Because that has been a very big issue for some time now.
Absolutely. You know, when banks rolled out ATM initially, the use cases, the business case you will see a bank make then would be invest in ATM, and they actually did, rolled out a lot of ATMs. About 16,000 or so in the country, active, according to, I think, CBN. Now, the banks were making the case at that time to, one, decongest the banking hall, two, acquire new customers, three, just make it more convenient, reduce their own costs of handling cash, and so on and so forth. So that was sufficient case. And if you look at the fees they were charging at that time, for most banks, they run ATM productivity accounting for each ATM and for branches. And most of their ATMs, when the cashless policy was not imposed, were making profit. So what has happened over time is that CBN policies, first on cashless policy, has affected the banks and the productivity of ATMs. First, the banks are compelled to limit the amount of money they dispense on ATMs. In those days, around 2010, people will go to ATM and withdraw 200,000, 400,000, 500,000. They then go into the banking hall. And if you do it on a bank branch, on us, what they call on us, so I have a First Bank card, I go to First Bank ATM. With those limits, it's even free. But today, you can't do that level of withdrawal because of cashless policy. Now, the challenge on the flip side is that POS operators, in most cases, allow people to do high volume transactions. CBN have tried to correct those policies, but they continue to happen on the field. So you see a situation where those guys are doing high volume cash in, cash out, charging as high as 400 naira on 20,000 naira, and the banks are losing out on that income. So the pressure now is the banks are making the case to say, look, these guys are making so much money. We can't do the same because you don't allow us to do that. Why not let's have a fairly common policy? So when CBN is making the case that they are not increasing, they are only trying to break the monopoly. I think monopoly is not a fair word to use on POS operators, because all financial instrument or agency or service provider in Nigeria are regulated by CBN. So there is no way they can just act in a monopolistic manner without the CBN can easily control that. But I think what this is about is CBN just making a little bit of correction action around their policies to correct the cashless policy, allow people access to more cash, and allow them to do it through the banks. Because obviously people continue to do it with POS operators.
You know, the sharp practices, every time I go to an ATM these days, I always feel a bit frustrated. I first of all never expect to see cash. When you do, you are limited if you're using another bank card, you know, how much you can collect, and it will seem that you have to do it more frequently so that the bank can extort, in my own opinion, as much as they can from one transaction. If you want to withdraw like 50,000 naira, you have to do it as much as 5 times in some instances. Yeah. And I'm wondering what exactly is going on. When did we become like this? You know, it was never really like this. Yeah. Are you saying that with this new policy, with this correction that the CBN is doing, we should see things better at the ATM?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The banks, greed is the name of the game in business. And if you own a
greed,
business, every successful business must have an element of greed. You know, I like to tell people that there is nothing that is absolutely negative, and there is something that is absolutely positive. So in business, you need a good dose of greed to be successful. Hunger, thirst for success, acquire more than competition. I mean, it's greed grinding. Of course, businesses on a sustainable basis would need to have long-term goals and changes that they're determined and put all their mission and vision to achieve. But to get there, you need a dose of greed to be commercially viable. So as a bank, if you see that you have a much larger network, higher investment in brick and mortar, some of these ATM operators even come to the bank to withdraw money, sometimes even off their ATM, and then go sell it at a premium. So if you then look at that, it looks like these guys are winning you. They have one on you in the game of getting cash in the hands of customers. So it's only natural that banks would do a bit of pushback through the regulator, which is what they have done. If you observe, none of the banks have come publicly to address this. They've left all the talking to CBN, which is different from what the telcos are doing. You know, a number of them even started talking ahead of the regulator, which I think is an aberration. You know, but for the banks, they just keep quiet, let CBN do all the talking, do all the adjustment, do the correction, and hopefully with these changes, we would see more cash now available in ATMs, you know, back to almost a couple of years. And I think it's okay for CBN to do so, despite the gains, again, of cashless policy, which is a lot. The number of bank accounts, for example, in Nigeria has grown in the last 10 years from about 169 million to over 300 million. So, of course, it shows that, you know, more and more people are getting on board opening bank accounts. And there are other indicators that confirm that the cashless policy has had some gains. But the cash in circulation continues to grow in spite of all the efforts and everything that's going on. So it's better to let people collect the money at the banks. It gives CBN better visibility, better tracking, better control of what's going on.
So it's finger crossed here. We'll see. You can tell us if your experience at the ATMs improve. That is what Mr. Ayeni is saying should happen as a result of this new tariff from the CBN on ATM withdrawals. So we have to say thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. Mr. Bosun Ayeni is a tech expert and also the CEO of Compumetric. Thank you so much for coming to Abuja Studios.
Thank you for having me.
We see your feedback, Honorable Ademola Alalade. He says a tariff hike at this time is very insensitive to the plight of Nigerians and should be aborted immediately. The regulators need to look into the hike demand by the telcos to be able to analyze analyze if the increase is justifiable. It is then it should be implemented. Ayo, what are you saying?
Well, I'm seeing Festus Akimboyewa's comment here, who is talking about one of the first conversations we had. Nigerians should be worried that our police can lose nearly 4,000 firearms and not raise any alarm, especially when the lost firearms could be in the hands of dangerous criminals. National Assembly must ensure that anyone within the police that's implicated for the cost of the firearms face disciplinary action, or the loss of the firearms face disciplinary action and criminal charges, especially if there is negligence and malicious intent, and that's a strong one. Thank you very much for the privilege of being a part of your morning. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm Ayo Makinde.
And I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.